Okay, in this vid we're putting our knowledge of JavaScript and jQuery together, and we're going to make an image slider. Images slide in from the right. You can use the image slider nav to select what images you want to see. We're going to have to introduce some new concepts to get this whole slider working, some new jQuery methods and stuff like that, some new JavaScript concepts. So if you learn by getting your hands dirty, then great. This is perfect. Pay attention and practice and memorize and check out all the new methods and stuff. If you learn by doing things more methodically, in the next videos we will be finished the 3-part crash course on JavaScript and jQuery, and we'll do JavaScript and jQuery more methodically, kind of more from the beginning. So either way, let's start with a blank web page. Let's add container div for the slider, container divs for the slides and for the nav. Let's add our images. Let's add some CSS for the container elements and the images. We're also going to add in the buttons. We can just use divs for the buttons, and we'll put the class button on them. Pardon. I want to back up one step here. So if I show you before we have the CSS, all the images just come one after another. If we add position absolute on the images, they're all just going to stack on top of each other. I've positioned all the images left 0, so they're all on top of each other. The images have a width 300 and height 224 pixels, so I've given the container elements that. So the whole slider is only 300 by 224. I need to position the images absolute, so I have to give the parent element position absolute or relative. A couple of new styles we haven't messed with yet, Z index. So check this out. If you have like X is the horizontal axis, Y is the vertical axis, the Z axis would be coming towards you, like out of the computer screen. That would be the third dimension, X, Y, and Z. So Z index says how high you want to stack something on that Z axis. So for example, if I give all the images a Z index 1, that'll put them all on the same plane. And then if I give the nav a Z index of 3, that says make sure that the nav is always higher than the images. So the nav will always show, even if I slip a Z index 2 image over all the rest of the images to make sure that image shows, the nav will still show because the nav has Z index 3. Also, this cursor pointer is new. That just has this little pointy hand. It just makes it look like a link because they're not actual links, they're just divs. Okay, we have our jQuery link in there. Let's add our blank script, and let's add our document ready call. Okay, so how we're gonna make this guy work. First of all, notice that the texture is the top image right now. Texture is the last image. So these are just positioning absolute on top of each other as the page loads. What we want to do is hide all the images, but what we would want to be the top image, the first image, lights. In jQuery, it's just easier to hide all the images and then unhide the first image. So I'm grabbing all the images inside the slides div and hiding them all. Hide is just display none. And then I'm grabbing all the images, and then I'm grabbing the first image in that list, and then I'm going to show it. Show is just display block. Here we're chaining jQuery methods. You can use more than one jQuery method on a single jQuery selector just by putting them one after another. .show, .add class. Add class is just going to add the class of active to this guy. So whatever class you put in here gets added to your element. Okay. So every 3 seconds we want the next image to slide in here. In jQuery, in JavaScript, excuse me, you do that by using set interval. So set interval says at whatever interval we set, this is 3 seconds, that's 3,000 milliseconds or 3 seconds. Every 3 seconds, just repeat whatever code is in here. Okay, so we're going to need to take our active class image and actually put that in a JavaScript variable. We'll call it active. So there we go. This says take the image with the active class that's inside the slides div and just stick it in a variable called active. Now we can mess with that using JavaScript and jQuery. We're gonna do the same thing with the next image. So the way this gallery is going to work, we have an active image, and then we always want to be grabbing the next image so we can slide that guy in. So it'll be like active, and then the next will slide in, active, and then the next will slide in. Grabbing the next image is easy for most of the cases. Like, for example, in the beginning, lights is the active image, so we just want to say grab the image after lights and stick that in the variable next. The only case where that's a little tricky is here. If the last image is the active div, then there's nothing after the last image. So how do we make it go back to the beginning? Well, we'll say if there's nothing after the active image, then make the next image the first image. So we're going to have to use an if-else to cover those two different cases. Okay, so here's the if-else. So in the 4 out of the 5 cases, if there's something after the active image, then make next that image after the active image. If there is no image after the active image, then make the next image the first image. So this is pretty straightforward, except this part might be kind of new. We've done next, that just says grab the element right after the element we're talking about. But what is this dot length? Well, in a case like if we were to put dot length on this, like slides image dot length, that would grab all the images and it would tell us how many images are in that list of images. So if we do, if we grab all the images in the slides div, that would be 5 images, and then we do dot length, that would be 5. So here in this case we're saying active next dot length. So if there isn't a next image after the active image, length will be 1. If there isn't an active image, if there isn't an image after the active image, then the length would be 0. That's a weird way of saying that. And then when we put that 0 or 1 value in here, if 0 or 1, really what we're saying is if that 0 or 1 will evaluate to true or false. 1 would be true, 0 would be true, 0 would be false. So we're saying if active dot next length is true, then run this. Otherwise, just run this. You'll get used to seeing that dot length syntax. It's kind of weird at first. Okay, so now that we've got our next variable, our next image, we're going to manipulate that. What we're going to do is we're going to grab it, we're going to push it left 300 pixels so it's outside of the div. You won't be able to see it even once we set it to display block because it's outside of the container div. Then we're going to set it to z-index 2, so once it slides in, it'll actually be on top of all these z-index 1 images, and then we'll animate it back in. So we'll do left 300 pixels, and then we'll animate it back into left 0. Grab the next image, do CSS left 300, that'll push it out of the div. Because all the images besides the active are hidden, we want to show the next image, and then give it a z-index 2. Next, we want to animate that image back in. So animate is a jQuery method we haven't used yet. It'll animate whatever CSS. So because it's left 300, if we animate it back to left 0, it'll just shift left. How fast does it shift left? Well, it'll animate in this duration. So we were giving it 1,000 milliseconds or in 1 second. So it'll animate from 300 pixels to 0 pixels left in 1 second. That should kind of work once, I think. Okay, so there it kind of works, and we haven't reset it, so it can't figure out what the next image is after that. So let's do that now. What we want to do is use a callback on this next animate. We want to say after it's done animating, run some more code to reset it and to set it up for the next animation. Here's how callbacks work. A lot of jQuery methods can take callbacks. Before you close it, before you do that close parenthesis, you just do comma function, comma anonymous function, and then you can put whatever code you want to run after the animation or whatever's done right here. So we want to set up for the next animation So we're going to remove the class active. We're going to hide it. We're going to give it a z-index of 1. And then we're going to add the class. Let's just see here. Yeah, we're going to take the active image, remove the class of active, and hide it. And now the next image is on top. So we want to say next image, give it a z-index of 1 because it did have a z-index of 2. And add the class active to that guy. So what we're saying is what was the next image is now the active image because it's already on top. Okay. Hope that makes sense. Now we're ready for our... Oh, I can just show you... That should kind of work. So there's our last image, and now it's looping back to the beginning. So that's pretty nice. Now we're ready for our click functionality. We're going to do nav, grab all the divs, grab anything with the class of button that's inside the ID of nav, and whenever that's clicked, run this code. First thing we need to do is figure out which button was clicked, because whatever button's clicked, we want to mess with that slide. So like if the third button's clicked, we want the third slide to animate in. So we got to figure out which one we're talking about. So I say this is a JavaScript thing that just says whatever got clicked, use that. So this selector refers to whatever button got clicked, and I'm grabbing the index of it. Index says if you have a bunch of things in a similar things in a row here, tell me which one got clicked. So if I click, and it's a zero-based array, so this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I click this guy, it'll give me the index of 2. Okay. Now, first thing we want to do when this is clicked is to stop the whole animation, because if we start a second animation while the first one's running, everything's just going to get all jumbled and messed up. So the only way to stop it is to actually give this whole set interval a variable. Check this out. Now we have var run slider equals the set interval. That'll still run totally the same way, but now we have a little handle that we can kill the animation when we need. So here we do a clear interval that'll stop the interval, and we put the interval variable name in there. Next thing we want to do is figure out which slide's our active slide and which is our next slide, kind of like we did up here, but it'll be slightly different. So we want to say var active equals slides image active. That's actually exactly the same. And then here the next image is going to be different because whatever button got clicked, we want to grab that same number image and slide that in. So whatever that number is, that's going to be the next. So it's slides image EQ which slide. So which slide is our number? If the third button got clicked, which slide would be 2 because it's a zero-based array, 0, 1, 2. And then the EQ just means grab that number element. So we're trying to grab the right image here. So if we're using which slide 3, that'll say grab me the third image. So it'll be like and EQ is also zero-based, so they'll match up. Okay, so now we've got our active and next. Now we can just copy in the actual the CSS and the animation JavaScript. Okay, so now the click should work. So these two lines are just the very same two lines we used here. As soon as we have our active and next, then we can just use the very same code on the next image, just to push it outside the div, move it up to a z-index, and then slide it back in. So now the click should work, sort of. I'm going to click this. Okay, that kind of works. Now there are going to be two kind of bugs in this the way it is now. First thing, if I click the same the same image, if I click the button of the same image that's currently shown, it's going to be a little weird. See how it flashed white and then it got all screwed up? We want to make it so if you click the same number button as the image that's currently up, we just don't want it to do anything. The second thing is if we click too fast, it'll just get all screwed up. See that? So really we want to say is if it's currently animating, do nothing too, if it's clicked. So what we're going to do is after we grab, we're going to say like if the button is clicked, and then before we run all this click code, we want to just add another if statement and say if it's currently animating, do nothing, and if the same button as what the image is live, do nothing. So first is that animated thing. So here we're saying if the images are not animating, then run this. So the not comes from this exclamation mark that says like the opposite of whatever this is. This is saying grab the images and then are they animated? So that would return true if they're animating. But here we're saying if that's the opposite of that. So what we're saying is if the slide's animating returns false. If they're not animating, then run this. So this should work a little better now. See that it didn't do it while it was animating. I had to keep clicking it, and then when it was done, it finally did it. Okay, now we can also add that thing. So we need to figure out which slide is active. So we're going to say active index equals the image with the class of active.index, and then we're going to say ampersand is and, so we're saying if this is false and which slide does not equal active image. So if we use two equal sign, that would say if which slide equals active index, but here we're saying if which slide doesn't equal active index. So if these two things so we're saying if which slide is not equal to active index and if the images are not animating, then run this. So that's all well and good. This should be working exactly how we want now. So it's not letting me click the same one, and it's also letting me not activate the click while it's animating. So that's pretty smooth. There's one last thing. We have some duplicate code here. We reuse those two same lines in these two guys. Anytime you have duplicate code in different parts of your program, you probably want to isolate that code and then just call that function or whatever. So a function is just a block of code. So I'm going to grab that code and I'm going to put it in a function. We can call the function slide in. And I'm just going to copy those two lines. So I'm copying them there. Now, because we're using next and active, we can actually pass in next and active into this because they're going to be different depending whether it's called here or here. So we just want to add some parameters as called active and next. But since they're called active and next here, I'm going to call them this active and this next, just to be clear that they're local to here. And then I'm going to change the references to active and next to this active and this next. And now we can call slide in place of those two sets of code. I'm going to call slide in, and I'm going to call active and next as my parameters. And then I'm going to do the same thing here, slide in, and active and next are my parameters. And now we should be good.